Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to start by asking a question, and that is, what do we see in these images? I know that it's early, so I'm going to answer. I'm going to help. We see streets lined with trees. Studies have shown that this is good for mental health. It improves the urban heat island effect, and trees are even able to reduce the concentrations of pollutants from their environment. But there's something else that we can see in these trees or in these images, and that is that in every street, the same species of tree is planted. And that's going to be the topic of my discussion today. My name is Tiara Zimmermann. I'm going to be talking about the urban trees of Rotterdam and how we can optimize tree selection for public health and climate resilience. Trees are facing an increased risk of mortality due to climate change-induced drought events. The Netherlands alone faced 3 years of consecutive drought events at the time that I conducted this research, and last year's spring actually broke the record for the driest ever since 1976. So if we have to change, so because of this, we have to change our patterns and approaches to how we plant trees in cities. This brought me to my research, which investigated tree selection as a means to optimize the removal of air pollutants known as phytoremediation, as well as investigating the effects of tree-to-tree interactions on drought resilience. I identified the main air pollutants in the greater area of Rotterdam. These were nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter 2.5, particulate matter 10, and ground level ozone. And data revealed that the concentrations of these pollutants in the urban areas of Rotterdam are only slightly below daily exposure thresholds. I identified the species of trees with superior phytoremediating abilities for these pollutants. These are shown in the corresponding boxes to the colors of the pollutants in the title. The numbers in brackets show how many individual trees of that species are planted in Rotterdam. I also conducted a drought tolerance assessment on these species and found that most of them are at least somewhat drought tolerant. This is to be expected because trees planted in urban areas are often selected for slight tolerance to drought since they are planted underneath concrete or asphalt, which are impermeable surfaces that also give them a small root area available. The species in bold, however, were identified to be drought sensitive. Then using QGIS, I mapped the general distribution of all the trees planted in the municipality of Rotterdam. That was a total of 190,400 individual trees. And although we saw in the first slide that the general trend is to plant in these monospecific tree lines, I had to first confirm that this was the case in Rotterdam. Here we see a zoomed in map of the center of Rotterdam. However, there's a selective filtering to display only the trees with superior phytoremediating abilities for those main pollutants. In yellow, and the yellow dots, we can see the species Platanus hispanica hybrid, or the London plane, which is planted in the highest quantity in Rotterdam, and mainly along the larger roads. And as we can see, the general pattern is to plant in these monospecific tree lines. Several studies were also assessed to compare the effects of species mixing on the drought resilience, or species mixing on the survival and the growth rate of trees before, during, and after drought events. And this was a big discussion on the roundtable yesterday. But I'm just going to briefly go over what I'd found, and that is that there are positive and negative species interactions. Positive interactions, maybe you recall from yesterday again, include resource partitioning, facilitation effects, and the selection effect, which is seen in the top image, often occurring between heterospecific neighbors or in mixed species plantations. Um, in the image below, you can see an example of a negative species interaction between trees of the same species showing crown shyness. This is in competition for canopy space. And again, you can see this is occurring between monospecific neighbors. Now I will go to the main findings of my research. The first main finding was that tree-to-tree interactions under drought conditions are highly complex and they're species specific. They are dependent on factors such as tree age, their size, as well as the degree of the drought stress. However, it was also indicated that drought-sensitive species often benefited from having heterospecific neighbors in comparison to when planted in monospecific plantations. My second finding was that although the effects on individual species varied, overall, increasing biodiversity could enhance community drought resilience. I would like to highlight and stress the importance of functional trait diversity, something that Hans from the Technical University of Munich was also speaking about, as a way to support positive tree-to-tree interactions. Air pollutant capture was also increased by trait diversity and diverse planting patterns on a vertical scale. Given the findings of my research, I would recommend this city of Rotterdam to transition away from scenario A, which is at the top left of the screen, towards scenario D. So moving away from these traditional monospecific tree lines that we have seen in Rotterdam Central towards a more diverse planting pattern with mixed species of trees with diverse functional traits. I'd like to thank you so much for your attention and thank you for your time. These are my references.